Hey guys, how y'all doing? BionicleSaurus here, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at the Safari Limited Stegosaurus. So, getting straight into the overall appearance, first off, the most striking thing about this figure, and probably the thing that gets talked about the most, it certainly has been talked about in the few reviews I've seen of it, is of course that color scheme. Oh my goodness, he is ketchup and mustard. He's got this really nice looking dark tannish yellow on the whole kind of bottom half of his body and most of his limbs, with this awesome red color with this kind of just dark outline to the patterning. Looks like someone spilled a bucket of blood over his back and then washed off the tips of his plates. It's a really cool color scheme, very unique, and definitely breaks from the usually quite dull coloration usually depicted on herbivorous dinosaur figures. The pose is wonderfully fluid and dynamic. It really does look like he's walking forward. The tail is held high, which is very accurate. Of course, we'll get into accuracy later, but besides it being accurate, it does look very good. This animal looks very energetic. I can imagine him walking great distances and running away from predators, not just standing there and swishing his tail around. This guy could move if he wanted to, and that's a great thing because one of the biggest stereotypes of herbivorous dinosaurs, especially Stegosaurus with its tiny head and tiny brain, people so often think of them as these big, lumbering, just dumb creatures that were just slow and stupid and were only successful because of their weaponry. But this creature here, this reconstruction, is clearly energetic and muscular and spry, and he is ready to move and do things, and it's so great to see a figure depicting Stegosaurus in this manner. So, for overall appearance, I give this figure an A+. For being such a typical famous dinosaur, this thing is going to grab people's attention on your shelf. I mean, it is so colorful, so bright, such a striking pose. It doesn't matter that it's quote-unquote just a Stegosaurus. It doesn't matter that it's a smaller figure. This thing is so eye-catching. So moving straight into detail, I will say that overall, it's not like super awe-inspiring. The detail isn't masterfully done. It's nothing near Papua Rebor, Sideshow, or even a lot of the newer Safari Limited figures. They really went for more wrinkly than scaly, which was kind of a common thing back in 2007 or 6 or 8 or whenever. I can't remember the specific year when these earlier revamped Wild Safari figures actually came out. I think it was 2007. But anyway, nonetheless, it's certainly not bad. They didn't just cop out with some of the kind of ugly skin texturing you see on some like older Carnegie figures or even some collective figures. I mean, yeah, it's not scales, it's just wrinkles, but at this size, it's relatively acceptable, and for what it is, it's certainly not poorly done. One very impressive thing is the amount of detail they were able to pack into that tiny little head. It has nostrils and I believe ear holes, kind of. And of course the eyes are very sharply painted, very visible. He looks like he's staring straight into my soul. Jokes aside though, it is quite impressive. I mean, we've seen some tiny figures with this review series in the past. They collect a Utah Raptor, they collect a juvenile T-Rex, the Papodilophosaurus, but none of their little heads or feet or whatever were as small as this thing's dinky little face. And yet, they certainly have not neglected the detail on the head, in the sculpt or in the paint job. So, for detail, I give this figure a B. The head is quite impressive, but overall, while the paint job is very nicely applied, underneath the sculpt is rather simplistic. There's no individually sculpted scales. It's certainly not the most fantastic detail out there. It's not bad, it's just not that great either. So now let's talk about paleontological accuracy. And I must say, this is one of the best reconstructions of Stegosaurus I have ever seen, whether in toys or paintings or sculptures or sketches or what have you. This is just a great restoration of this animal. I don't know very much about theriophorans, nor stegosaurs, nor Stegosaurus specifically, so I really am not sure what species this is supposed to represent. I believe it is supposed to be Stegosaurus cynops, mainly because that is the most common species, generally the one that toys are based off of, but regardless of what specific species it is supposed to be, the general traits and attributes of the genus as a whole are all present here and are all very well done. First off, the most iconic part of Stegosaurus, those plates. Now, they are a little curved, which I'm not sure. I know there's one species that has a more curved, one that has a more straight diamond shape. I can't remember which is which. Once again, sorry. They have the correct number and the correct size going, with the very small ones on the neck getting larger and larger to the very largest pair being right over the hips, and then tapering very quickly down to some somewhat small ones, and then just stopping, and then there's the Thagomizer. Much better than what some figures do, which is actually have them taper evenly on both sides. That's not how it would have been. You would have very small ones on the neck, and when they ended on the tail, they wouldn't have been nearly as small, and the largest ones would have been over the back legs. So that is all very good. The feet. Now, I believe only the inner two toes are supposed to have hooves, or at least that's the current consensus. All four toes on the front feet are reconstructed with hooves present on them in this replica. For the time, that was probably acceptable, and regardless of number of hooves, all the numbers of digits are correct. The head is perched on quite a long neck, a lot longer than most Stegosaurus toys show, which is very good, very accurate, something that we don't see well done a lot, but it is well done here. And the head itself is very well proportioned, incredibly tiny, like I said earlier, which is very good. The tail, it is not drooping, it is not some pathetic little ceratopsian tail. This is a proper Stegosaurus tail, being held roughly parallel to the ground, straight out behind the animal, not curving or drooping or anywhere near the ground, not waving around and all curvy, slashing at some predator. This is a tail being held high and proudly by its owner. I'm so glad to see that done correctly. And beyond that, the entire posture of this whole creature is pretty much flawless. One issue I will say is that the Thagomizer, the spikes, they really form more of a V shape when they should be coming a bit more straight out of the side of the tail. Another thing is that the feet are very flat and elephantine, and at least in the front feet, I would have preferred the backs and bottoms of them to be a bit more concave. So, for this figure's accuracy, I'm going to give it a straight A. My goodness, the only inaccuracies I can find are very, very small nitpicks, tiny issues that barely matter in the grand scheme of things. All in all, Safari Limited has really made an incredibly accurate figure. This is one of the best reconstructions of Stegosaurus I have ever seen, and it is one of my favorite figures from Safari Limited of all time. So, my final rating for this figure is an A-. I think that to this day, it truly holds up as one of the best figures Safari Limited has ever produced. Thank you for watching, and BionicleSaurus signing out.